Sudhanvan.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak here today on my project. My name is Sudhanvan Iyer. I am a second-year medical student from the University of Texas in Galveston, and I'm here to speak to you about a very interesting and kind of niche topic over how severe burn injuries can actually contribute to the development of neurodegenerative diseases later on in the future. So just to kind of go into what we're kind of dealing with here, we're taking two very big parts, and that's the neurodegenerative component as well as a burn component. So first, neurodegeneratively, we have something called white matter disease, which is a generally new term that's coming into market. And it's used as a sort of precursor to more full-blown neurological disease. Typically, we see it with demyelination disorders as well as general neuroinflammation. And so we describe it as a chronic inflammation and axonal injury. Now, severe burn injuries or burn injuries in general, they tend to have very systemic effects on the body as a whole. While moderate burn injuries can have some more localized effects, we see that severe burn injuries trigger systemic inflammation as well as oxidative stress, even producing newer free radicals throughout the body. However, their impact on general chronic neuroinflammation is still somewhat unexplored. And so that's why we dove to kind of explore this a little further. And so this kind of is rooted into one of the biggest hospitals that we have at UTMB in Galveston. It's known as Shriners Burn Hospital. It's world renowned, and we see cases, about almost 1,000 cases per week. It's typically pediatric kids, but we wanted to focus this study more on adults. And so we focused it first on a literature review. Then we did a systematic review and a meta-analysis of about 21 different articles, 2,100 different articles. And our conclusions from that kind of showed a good association between the development of neurodegenerative diseases following the incidence of systemic burn injuries. However, we wanted to take this one step further and see if we could actually replicate this using our retrospective cohort analysis. We also used the Trinidex database. It's a world-renowned database with over 100 million patients. From that is what we used to analyze and create our cohorts. We focused our cohorts on adults from 40 to 65. And then we use the American Burn Association's guidelines for what is determined to be a severe burn injury, which they determine to be 10% or more of your total body surface area being afflicted by a burn. And so those are our two cohorts, and we decided to compare the two with the Trinidex database. So initially, we had about 45,000 patients in both cohorts. Once we did propensity score matching, we filtered down to about 18,000, which is a pretty small number, right? But we propensity score matched for 17 different baseline conditions, including demographics, common comorbidities, namely for BMI and for diabetes. We also further stratified that so that we can analyze whether any kind of levels of BMI and diabetes actually had a significant impact on our results. So contributing by A1C levels and then percentile levels for BMI. And then finally, we looked into risk ratios with corresponding 95% confidence intervals. That's how we kind of determined what was significant or not using a p-value of 0.05 as our level of threshold. And we extended our time frame for about 20 years. Typically, we see neurodegenerative diseases, they take a while to progress. Even with something new like white matter disease, we still wanted to give patients an adequate time to actually let the disease progress. So over here on the left, we see a forest plot, which is kind of our results. That dotted line over at 1 is our level or threshold of significance. Anything after that, we found a pretty significant association with. We see a pretty large standard deviation with cognitive decline, and I'll go into more about why that's the case in a little bit. But we see that there's a higher risk of dementia, metabolic encephalopathy, and of course, white matter disease. Now, I wanted to also make known some of the strengths and limitations of this study. Being that we've also done a systematic review and meta-analysis, we know that there is somewhat of an association given the current literature. However, in our own analyses, we find that using a Trinidex database, which is a large retrospective cohort analysis again, we have the advantage of a long-term follow-up period of 20 years, propensity score matching to ensure that both cohorts are very similar to each other using a one-to-one nearest neighbor matching. And of course, there's a large representation of patients because this is taking data, de-identified data from across the United States and across all kinds of health systems. The limitations of this study are that because it's a retrospective analysis, there could be confounding variables that we haven't really considered in a patient's past history. As well as because it's a database that's focused mainly on ICD-10 codes, CPT codes, lab codes, it's all coding based. it's also subject to possible coding inaccuracies. But hopefully, and our goal is with propensity score matching as well as our prior analysis, that filters out some of the bias and some of the fluff so that we can really focus in on the bigger results. So now to go into the real meat or the real detail of this, we have a potential mechanism for how we believe this is actually caused. So our theory is that because burn injuries, they cause such systemic inflammation throughout the entire body, typically the blood-brain barrier is there to protect your brain from chronic neuroinflammation or even smaller neuroinflammation events. But over time, we find that these severe burn injuries tend to also activate microglial cells and deactivate oligodendrocytes, the CNS producing or white matter cells. And so because of that, the large sheer quantity of cytokines and inflammatory mediators are just constantly bombarding your blood-brain barrier to weaken those endothelial cells and create small, tiny gaps in that area. Over time, smaller mediators tend to seep through those junctions and they start to cause small localized areas of neuroinflammation. And while not immediately present, over time they start to develop these diseases faster. Namely their demyelination diseases and dementia, as well as progressive neurodegenerative diseases. We didn't find an association with vascular dementia because that vascular dementia is more hypertensive related. However, the general inflammation related diseases and demyelination diseases were something that we found more significant. Overall, the take home that we kind of wanted to ensure and make sure that we kind of relate to everybody is that typically in Shriners, even such a big world-renowned burn hospital, we see burn injuries as something that's a very acute injury. We treat the hypovolemic shock that might occur from a burn injury, the sepsis that might occur from a burn injury, and even now the psychosocial aspects of it. However, once the patient itself is, they've kind of been seen and they've kind of been treated, we keep their follow-up periods longer and longer and longer. It tends to be 1, 3, 5 years. But we don't actually see what's going on underneath the skin, right? And these are these developing diseases that we may not screen for on a regular basis because we don't actually know what's happening. And so our goal is to kind of see we should have more rigorous follow-ups, keep a larger track of these patients and kind of see if there's anything developing under the skin, whether it may not be immediately evident on CT or neuroimaging. Over time, our goal is to prevent adverse effects like this and hopefully improve patient outcomes for the long run, given that we have such access to these resources in the future too. And these are my references. These are my acknowledgments. But thank you guys all for your time.
Thank you very much for that presentation. I just wanted to say I really appreciate the fact that you're looking at a multidisciplinary approach and taking away some of the myth that burn injuries are just, like you said, a physical situation. I was wondering, do you have any suggestions of how we could be more effective at engaging more of a multidisciplinary effect, particularly in behavioral health and in primary care, in order to make sure that these burn patients get the help that they need over the course of years?
That's a very good question. And it's multifaceted for multiple reasons, right? Especially when you kind of see that different areas have access to different resources, it's going to be hard to standardize one level of care for everybody. Even in like places where there are medical schools or big medical facilities, we also find difficulties in kind of giving access to care for people who need it. For example, in Galveston, we have a big hospital called St. Vincent's. It's a free health clinic, but even they have difficulties getting access to certain resources. And so in general, it's a good idea to just kind of find a good time to have a general follow-up. You can do neurological exams at home too with friends and family. And there are self-exams that they're now being implemented in more rural areas to differentiate between the progression of dementia as well as Alzheimer's. They're two small or smaller, very well-known diseases. However, the screening methods for these are up and coming. But small take-home can definitely prevent the progression of bigger diseases overall in the future.
Sorry, I don't know if it's taboo for me as a presenter to ask another presenter questions.
Go for it.
So, quick question on my end. So, like burn injuries, obviously, you can liken them to cytokine storms, and and give you a lot of neurodegeneration. Particularly, what I know is leukoencephalopathies, right? So, and you can maybe T2 someone or flare someone and pick up white matter brain disease. But what's the like? What does your institution do like post burn? Is it a part of a say like you're at an increased risk for this, or in like you really can't really reverse that too? So like my real question is, what's your protocol for telling patients, hey, this is what you should see coming?
It's a very good question. And you're right. Leukoencephalopathy, chronic leukoencephalopathy especially, it's irreversible, especially even if you catch it at a particularly early age. And white matter disease or demyelination disorders are harder to kind of catch. Even with something like white matter disease, it's not always evident on a CT or MRI, so catching it early is difficult for us. Since this is a very like newer thing we've done, we've started off with a systematic review and a meta-analysis. And we're only recently we've started looking into CT images and MRIs in Shriners itself to see if we can identify early risk factors and start to treat it sooner. Our experiments so far have been kind of looking into whether vitamin supplementation can have any kind of impact, whether it's niacin or B12, and then seeing if we can use levels of CRP as well as ESR rates to see if that can give us a good clue about where inflammatory markers are heading, and if we can treat general inflammation to prevent the cytokine storm, as you said, from progressing even further.
Thank you. I enjoyed your presentation. From macro databases, it's hard to dissect out what the different stratifications of your burn injury are. So on your own study at home now at Galveston, do you think you'll be able to dissect this out as far as extent of burn wound and depth of burn wound, and if that plays a role on?
It's a great question. And so we've kind of stratified this in multiple ways. Yes, as we've kind of gone over, ABA or the American Burn Association typically sees 10% or more of your total body surface area as distinguishing a severe burn injury. But you're right, coding inaccuracies exist with a large database study. So at an at-home institution, what we've been looking into is full thickness burns, partial thickness burns, and then surface burns, so sub 10% of your total body surface area, to see if there genuinely is any kind of impact at even a small amount of burn injury kind of causing any sort of systemic inflammation. Of course, the theory in the current literature is that it doesn't. However, looking into a localized full thickness burn is something that has not been explored yet, but we are currently exploring, and hopefully we'll find good results about that.
I enjoyed your talk. I've worked with Dr. Phillips for years. I know the whole Galveston thing. The other thing that I ask is, I think this is great, the oxidant stress. The only thing that you could add to your study, what about the gut? We're learning now that the colon is the thing. A lot of this may come from other SIH, yeah, that sort of thing. And I think maybe a lot of this stuff might be the gut. And that would be something to further look into. Because if you get like, say, a 20% burn, that may not do much, but yet the person's having, and with all the debridement, their gut and all that stuff's going with the broken down junctions. So you can add this as a little side thing. But that was a great talk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please support our mission to improve quality of patient care through education. Join us, follow us, and share this content with family and friends.